Whether or not he may be a snob, an egomaniac, or even a control freak, there's no denying that Edward Norton is a very talented actor. His reputation for choosiness has led to a lot of great performances on his part. Even if the movie itself didn't turn out quite right, he usually gives it his all. And that's why I've decided to count down my top 5 Edward Norton performances. Of course, keep in mind that I have yet to see all of his films, so this list could change wildly in the future for all I know. But for now, these are my own personal choices. Number 5. Leaves of Grass. I put this low on the list because aside from Norton's performance, this movie is horrendous. But on the plus side, Norton is able to give a performance that feels inevitable when you consider the kinds of roles he's always been good at. The man who became famous for playing dual natures now plays twin brothers, and he often ends up acting off of himself in the film. One brother is an accomplished educator who's facing troubles that threaten his entire career. The other is a petty criminal who has established a very careful and sophisticated cultivation of marijuana. Both brothers are very intelligent, but the different ways they use their intellect has led them to take wildly different paths. And they only crisscross because they are brothers who love each other despite their differences. The genius of Edward Norton's 2 performances is that it really feels like 2 completely different people are on screen, and he disappears into each role without drawing attention to it. It's just a shame about the rest of the film not really matching up to him, but overall I would still say this marks one of the more enjoyable Edward Norton performances that I've seen. Number 4. The People vs. Larry Flynt. This is of course a movie about the founder of Hustler magazine. Larry Flynt is portrayed as a loud, hedonistic man who indulges in questionable activities at best. His contributions to the industry of pornography are labeled as unacceptable, even by his own peers, and the film follows his many battles for the right to keep publishing those magazines. Edward Norton plays the idealistic lawyer who spends most of his life defending this client. Norton's character is thus given the task of explaining to the jury, as well as the audience, why it's important to allow Larry Flynt to continue publishing his magazines. While his co-stars tend to get into some crazy antics throughout the film, Norton plays his role completely straight as a young man who is frustrated to no end by his client, but in the end is determined to make his case in court and defend his client to the best of his skills. Number 3. Primal Fear. This is another film about the law and the courtrooms, but in this case, Norton isn't the lawyer, he's the defendant. A young man is found fleeing a murder scene covered in blood. Aaron Stampler is accused of murdering a beloved Chicago archbishop, and it seems a foregone conclusion that he's going to be found guilty. It's later discovered that he's had abuse thrown at him all his life, and he is very limited in his speech due to a pronounced stutter. His case attracts the eye of a big-shot lawyer, Martin Vale, who warms to Stampler's gentle nature despite his rough past. Despite his initial interest in the case being purely for the headlines, Vale comes to the conclusion that Stampler is innocent, and he's determined to prove that innocence in court. Not only was this Norton's first film role, it remains to be one of his best. His multi-layered performance in the film was highly acclaimed by audiences, and it even led to Norton's first Oscar nomination. This is the kind of debut that any young actor would kill for. Of course, he would later show that he could follow up on this fantastic success, but all the same, I still rank Primal Fear pretty high among Edward Norton performances. Number 2. Fight Club. I would be very remiss to overlook one of the most beloved cult movies of all time. Edward Norton plays an insomniac who seeks out support groups simply for the companionship rather than because he has an illness. On a flight home from a business trip, Norton runs into Tyler Durden, an outsider who scorns the materialism of his society, as well as the suppression of macho attitudes in a weak culture. He's also resentful of the fact that his generation does not have a great challenge or obstacle, and thus they are made even more weak. While the movie's misunderstood messages and crazy style have made it legendary amongst movie buffs, I think Norton is a very underrated part of the film. His cynical, detached narration provides a lot of insight into his sleepless mind, and his transformation from just another useless cog in a great machine to becoming Durden's protege is one of his most fleshed out characters yet. While it's not David Fincher's best film, I definitely recommend Fight Club if you're interested in seeing it, even though it means I've already broken 2 rules in the process of putting it on this list. And my number 1 Edward Norton performance is American History X. Yes, it is a bit cliche, but honestly, there's a reason for that movie being so popular. This is a movie that is arguably Norton's most famous film, and not just because of his performance. It was on production of this film where Norton really began earning his reputation as being hard to work with, as well as being a control freak. Personally, I don't know how much of it is true or just rumors. It's really hard to determine if he took over because the director disowned the project, or if the director disowned the project because Norton was taking over. But all this rumors and gossip, all of that overlooks the amazing performance by Norton as Derek Vineyard. Derek is a neo-Nazi skinhead who leads similar-minded people in a series of racist attack campaigns. He's eventually imprisoned for a brutal crime that I won't go into, but when he emerges, he's a changed man, and he wants to turn his life around. This means trying to get his younger brother, Danny, out of the very gang he was such a part of, and it leads to a confrontation with his former friends and mentor. Throughout the first half of the movie, Derek is featured in flashbacks narrated by his younger brother, Danny, and we really see just how well Norton adapted himself for this role. His physical transformation is such that he's almost unrecognizable as this ruthless and violent individual. The movie also provides him with hate-filled speeches that really speak towards a dark part of human nature. But ultimately, he's just a scared young man trying to find meaning and comfort through very questionable and racist means. All of it leads to what I consider to be his best performance. But the great thing about Edward Norton is that he's so diverse that no single role defines him as an actor. Just like Christian Bale and Guy Pearce, Edward Norton is a human chameleon when it comes to picking these various different roles that have almost nothing to do with each other, and still delivering brilliant performances time after time. Usually, anyway. There is no denying that Edward Norton is one of the best actors of his generation, even now.